Dive. Myself, Dave Lockwood, and Adam Scher. We love our sponsor, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, because they have a unique platform that you don't really find in DFS nowadays, and it's appreciated by many because for those of you that aren't looking to mass multi-enter with 150 lineups, well, you're playing against people that have 10 only, no more than 10 entries. You can hand build them. You don't have to worry about running scripts or crunching if that's not your thing. And the salaries are different than other sites by a long shot. So you can have, unique lineups to all of the other sites, whereas a lot of people are just trying to copy one from the other, where you can gain an advantage there. So basically, here's the deal. If you sign up with our link and use the code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, you can get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points when you deposit. That's all you got to do. And those YSRPs, those Yahoo Sports Rewards points, they can be used as currency on the site to play and win real money that you can then withdraw. So pretty good stuff. That is Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. And I am going to drop the link in chat right now before we get started. They got 2K to first today, the 15K MLB guaranteed, 10 entries, max, 12% management fee too. Some of the contests don't have any, but 12%, lower than most sites. Well, actually almost all of them, and certainly lower than most contests. So check it out. Use the promo code AWESEMO when you sign up, and I'm dropping the link in chat right now. You will see that come up as you do, and it'll be under my name, Dave Lockwood, not under the AWESEMO one. Adam Scher, how we doing, baby?
Doing good, man. Excited. Nice. I think it's our first 15-game slate of the season, so pretty excited about that.
El Negro Loco says, shout out to Adam for getting out of the basement for today's show.
Just for today.
You've done plenty of shows out of the basement.
Yeah, it's always either a hotel room or the basement. But
Dave,
that changes in 2 weeks.
Go ahead.
No, I said that changes in 2 weeks. I won't be in the basement anymore.
I know, man. That's going to be great. David Hanna says, they are late again. Oh, David. We're just getting prepared. Don't worry. We're going to get to everything, and we're going to break it down better than anybody out there. All right? So we pride ourselves on giving you guys the best analysis in the business, and we try and do that each and every night here on the Deeper Dive. Let's get it started. New York Yankees, Tampa Bay Rays. Yes, it is a 15-game slate. So if there are some games that are not really relevant from a fantasy standpoint or appealing, we will talk about them, but briefly, in order to get more comprehensive analysis elsewhere. This Yankees-Rays game is one that I just don't have a lot of interest in, Adam. And you know what? We haven't spoken about this prior, so look, we could have totally different opinions here. The Yankees do have a 4.9 total. The Rays are at 4.7, so it's not like runs aren't expected to be scored, but I do have respect for Chirinos. Stanek is a good opener, and Sabatia's pretty decent too. He has allowed some power to righties this year. That's probably where I would go, if anywhere. But overall, not one of my favorite games. What are you doing with Tampa and Yankees here in New York, of course?
Yeah, same boat for me. Outside of a couple of pieces of the game, there's not a whole lot that I like. And even amongst those pieces, I don't think that they're going to end up being priorities for me in the context of the entire slate. They have healthy implied run totals here, but you just have to keep in mind how many teams are playing, and that relative to the slate, that's not really 4.7 and 4.9 isn't really that high. I think that Travis d'Arnaud batting seventh at 2,800 on DraftKings and $7 or $8 on Yahoo is a perfectly fine catcher option. Just save some money there. There's clearly other places to spend it on this slate. He has enough power upside that he's a reasonable play. Tommy Pham is inexpensive, batting second for Tampa Bay. I think that he's a reasonable play. But beyond that, I just don't really have a whole lot that I feel the need to get to in this game.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Really, the only one for me would be Travis d'Arnaud. And it's not because I love the guy. It's because he's really cheap. Sabathia has allowed some power to righties, and it's at a pretty friendly park. Like, that's really it. If you liked Yandy Diaz leading off or Tommy Pham, I get it. But like you said, compared to the rest of the slate, it's not really a game that has all that much interest. And look, I think both of us have respect for Chirinos, but I don't see myself going here, especially knowing that we don't we don't really know what his pitch count will look like. And, I don't see myself going to Sabathia against a team that's running out a 7 righty lineup. Do you have any thoughts on the pitchers before we keep going here?
No, neither one grades out well for me on this particular slate. It's not that there's a good mid-range or cheap pitching, but there are just guys that I like more than either of these two.
Colorado and Philadelphia, Citizens Bank Park. It is going to be pretty humid. It is going to be pretty warm, high 70s, working down its way to the low 70s throughout the night, but warm temperature at Citizens Bank Park. Slight chance of rain, but I don't think it should be anything serious. And I'm personally not really heavy on pitching here. I think you could make an argument for John Gray, but on the other side, Cole Irvin had a good start, but got really no missed bats. Didn't really see any swinging strikes there. 4.9 total, Adam, for the Philadelphia Phillies, and for the Colorado Rockies, we've got a run total of 4.7, which did come up throughout the day. It opened around 4.4, so you've seen some movement there against the rookie left-hander. What are your thoughts on pitching here?
Yeah, so I mean, you could certainly make an argument for Gray, like you said. He has good strikeout stuff. He is a good pitcher.
Did you just fall asleep with your eyes open?
But there is one pitcher in his price.
Did you just fall asleep with your eyes open for a second?
What?
Or are we just delayed?
Delayed, I guess.
Okay, all right. Because I had said something and I stopped talking for 5 seconds and you were just like,
I was in normal time as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, okay. I thought it was the blackout shades. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, I'm with you. Like, you can make an argument for Gray, but just because he's a good pitcher, but he's not someone that I'm really getting to here. There is a pitcher in his price range that we'll get to that I like a lot more than Gray. And then I also obviously like the pitching at the top, and I like saving some money at SP2. As far as Irvin goes, not a high strikeout guy throughout the minors. Gets deep into games, doesn't walk a lot of guys, but I think that I would rather be getting to some of this Colorado power from the right side. In particular, Story and Arenado. They're both expensive, but you're talking about a pitcher here that does not miss bats. It's not Coors Field, but it is still a very good park for power. Story, not so much Arenado, but Story has a strikeout problem, and that's about it. Tons of power, tons of speed. Arenado doesn't even have a strikeout problem. So both of those guys grade out as really good plays individually. And then for Philadelphia, it's not that I really like anyone individually. I do think that they have some merit as a stack just because John Gray is good, but the Colorado bullpen is terrible. And so that's why I don't really like anyone that much individually, because if Gray is pitching his normal game, then none of them are really good plays. But if Gray gets unlucky or Gray just has a bad start and they get to the bullpen early, then the entire team is good plays.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mentioned it in today's deeper dive on awesemo.com. Sorry, deep dive. The one most appealing aspect of this game is righty power against Irvin. I mean, I don't think he's a bad pitcher or going to be a bad pitcher, but he's also not a guy that's going to miss a lot of bats. And when, like you said, Story has a strikeout problem, which becomes less of a problem when you're facing somebody like Irvin. So Story and Arenado, definitely pretty interesting options here. Now, you may have said it and I missed it. I know you talked about those two, but as far as a stack goes, are you looking to the Rockies? I know you said really individual pieces for the Phillies, but with the Rockies, are you getting down to like the Desmonds and the Brendan Rodgers?
Probably not. Brendan Rodgers on FanDuel is reasonably priced at $2,500. He's not in the DraftKings player pool. Yahoo priced him pretty appropriately at $13. So I don't think I'll get to much from Colorado outside of Story and Arenado. And then it's just the opposite for me on the Phillies, where I don't think I'll really be getting the one-offs, but I do think they're a high upside stack.
Dave took a screenshot of what I was talking about. Check it out in Slack. You'll see what you'll see what I mean. Where I honestly thought you just nodded out. Washington.
I haven't got.
Yeah, Washington and the Cubs. Max Scherzer, Cole Hamels. Unsurprisingly, third lowest total on the slate goes to the Chicago Cubs. They are at, excuse me, they're at 3.6 on the day. It should shock nobody. And two teams lower than them, of course, the Miami Marlins, way lower than any other team, a full run total lower, or full run lower than the Cubs, and then Pittsburgh at 3.3. But I don't want to talk about Scherzer in a vacuum, Adam. I want to talk about him across sites because I think it's pretty important to bring this into context. Degrom is 11-4 on DraftKings in the best matchup a pitcher can get. Hands down, does not get better than this, at least for a righty. Max Scherzer's 11-1. He's phenomenal, one of the highest ceiling pitchers on the planet, but he's only $300 cheaper. Now on FanDuel, Max Scherzer is $1,200 cheaper than Jacob Degrom, and on Yahoo, you have Max Scherzer $5 cheaper, which is significant given the salary structure. So how do you see this? Because for me, Jacob Degrom on DraftKings, it's so, if you're MMEing, of course, but like if you're playing three lineups, it's difficult for me to get away from Degrom at such a similar price. But FanDuel and Yahoo are different.
Yeah, DeGrom's my favorite pitcher on the slate. I have him projected higher than Scherzer, who I think is a really good play. The issue is just that I have DeGrom farther ahead of. I have him far enough ahead of Scherzer that, assuming Scherzer is going to get some ownership and take some ownership from DeGrom, that I'm most likely going to end up just getting a lot of DeGrom. It's as good a matchup as you can get going against Miami in Miami. I have DeGrom with around a 50% chance of hitting his 32-point target score on DraftKings. It's just a phenomenal spot, and I don't think we'll end up getting something like 45% DeGrom to 10% Scherzer or anything like that. And so I'm probably going to end up just getting a ton of DeGrom again.
Right. Yeah, it's so different on, like, all right, how much of a difference structure-wise, like building a lineup, do you think the extra $1,200 on FanDuel and extra $5 on Yahoo makes if you went Scherzer?
I think it probably makes a bigger difference on Yahoo because their pricing is just tighter. On FanDuel, obviously $1,200 is a lot, but you just have so many mispriced hitters across 30 different teams that it's not going to be that tough to get to DeGrom, I don't think. Obviously I'm more willing to, if I can't get the hitters I want, I'm willing to just drop down to Scherzer. That's fine. But I actually think it'll probably be more of an issue on Yahoo than on FanDuel.
Gotcha. Yeah, and there are some really cheap bats and really good spots today on FanDuel. I don't know what they did with the Dodger pricing, Adam.
It ruined the slate.
Right? Like you have a guy in Jock Peterson. I know we're bouncing around, but deal with it. You have a guy in Jock Peterson who has more home runs against righties than any pitcher or any hitter in baseball not named Christian Yelich. He has been dominant against right-handers and just all around phenomenal this year. He's batting leadoff and he's 3,100. Max Muncy's sub 3K against the guy in Desclafani who has been terrible against righties throughout the entirety of his career.
And it's a huge park upgrade for power. There's no reason for them to not only to be cheap, but not to be like the most expensive stack on the slate.
Oh, right. It's a great American. Yeah.
Right.
Well, we'll get into it. We'll talk about that game. But first, I want to just round this game out. I think we covered the Scherzer analysis there. What about Cole Hamels and Washington? I'm personally not interested in paying that much for him, but I did find it interesting that when you look at the stack ownership, because I was thinking, maybe I get some low-owned Washington National stacks against the guy in Hamels who can be homer prone. Weather at Nationals Park is going to be 80 degrees at first pitch. And then I go over to Awesemo's stack tool, which is fantastic, and we highly suggest all of you check that out. Use the promo code Deeper Dive, one word, to get 50% off your first month for all of the content, all of the ownership projections, player projections, Fantasy Cruncher add-on, lineup builder, articles from myself, Adam, Josh, and everyone else. So use that code Deeper Dive, one word, to get half off. And you can follow along here as I mention this DK or the Awesemo stack tool. I was surprised, man. The ownership coming in on Washington was not low. It was, I think, around 7.4%, which, in context with the rest of this slate, is towards the top.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see if that holds because we obviously it does change as we get closer to lock.
Sure.
But I like the Nats here, or I have some interest in the Nats if they're low owned. If they're projected still, at 630 to be one of the higher owned stacks, then I lose a lot of interest because I do think Hamels is a really good pitcher. The reason that I would have interest in the Nats if they are low owned is that Hamels is not great at holding runners. Wilson Contreras does help a bit because he's great at throwing them out. But you have Trey Turner back at the top of the lineup with a ton of speed, Victor Robles behind him with a ton of speed, Anthony Rendon, who's a phenomenal hitter, Howie Kendrick, who has been good this year. I don't know how good he actually is. Kurt Suzuki with power at the catcher position. You can cover some weak positions at shortstop. You cover your catcher position. You get high upside from Rendon. It's just an appealing stack if they're low owned from an upside standpoint. But I don't think it comes through often enough that I would want to be getting to them if it is popular.
Right. Yeah, to put it simply, I was just surprised that, and I think you're right. We'll have to pay attention to that because it's very possible that things change. But yeah, they were very very high ownership, and when you look at like the top stack probability, they're very low, and their value is very low. That could obviously change at least the value if their ownership projection comes down. Do you want to talk about any other bats from this game or Cole Hamels? I'm assuming you're not on him, but maybe you are.
I'm not. He's just at a price point that I don't want to get to on the slate. I'd rather get up to one of the more expensive pitchers, save some money, or save some money to someone else.
Yeah, I mentioned it on the early bird last night or this morning that if you think saving $1,400 going from Scherzer to Hamels or saving even $1,700 from Degrom to Hamels, it's a pretty unwise decision, ill-advised.
Yeah, if you're going that route, save another either $1,500 to Lucchesi on DraftKings or Lucchesi $6,200 on FanDuel. So on FanDuel, I really think there's 4 pitchers that you should be considering, and one of them is Garrett Cole, who is kind of borderline because of the matchup. So with FanDuel, I really don't think you should be rostering a pitcher not named Degrom, Scherzer, Cole, or Lucchesi with their pricing.
Yep. It's funny. I thought when I started writing this slate, like when I started researching it, I was like 15 games, I'll have no problem writing up a ton of pitchers. And I don't write pitchers up in articles. I know you're the same way. We don't write pitchers up in articles just to write them up, but some days there are better options and you want to make sure that you list all the guys that you think could have a good game or viable for one reason or another. Based a lot of it on price restrictions and where a lot of these guys are priced, there are not a ton of guys that stood out to me today. Like Montas, if he was at a reasonable price on 2 pitcher sites, I'd have a whole lot more interest in him being almost $9,000. And I felt like that with a lot of other pitchers.
Yeah, it's a really weird slate because if you just kind of look through it like by price point and kind of say, okay, who's my favorite guy in this range? It's like there's very clear cut tiers for me.
Yep. All right. Well, let's talk Boston and Houston. Garrett Cole, Rick Porcello. Dive right into this one, Adam. I had trouble finding really anything I loved, but interested to hear your Garrett Cole analysis because he has the highest swinging strike rate on this slate, and I think in the league, but definitely on the slate, but it's also Boston.
Right, highest strikeout percentage also. There's a new ERA estimator that I read about in an article that predicts ERA better than like xFIP does, and Cole has the best in the league in that as well.
What site was that? Prospectus?
What's that?
Was that on Prospectus?
No, it was on I don't even remember the site. Anyone that wants the link, just remind me.
I haven't read it yet.
Yeah. So he had like the best in the league. He's obviously been really, really good. And there would be a pretty strong argument to ignoring the matchup and getting to him here if you didn't have both of Degrom and Scherzer, and then also bats that you wanted to get to. The reason that I think that makes a big difference is that you're not looking for Cole to just beat Degrom. You're looking for him to beat Degrom and Scherzer at similar price points, and that starts to get to the really, really unlikely territory. So I'm not getting the Cole. I'm certainly not getting the Porcello. I do have interest in the bats here, though, because it's just 2 phenomenal offenses in a park that plays up right-handed power, and that's pretty much all these teams have. And they're going to be virtually unowned. We have Boston projected on DraftKings at like 2% stack ownership, Houston a little bit below that. And Houston's expensive, which is a problem, but the matchup against Porcello isn't that bad. The matchup against Cole obviously is terrible, but on DraftKings, you have Boston priced for this matchup. The most expensive guy in their lineup is JD Martinez at 4,500. They have speed in this lineup that can take advantage of Cole. They have power that can hit against anyone. And they're just, super talented and priced for this matchup. So I do think that Boston's a really intriguing stack in tournaments just because of how talented they are and the fact that they're playing in Fenway.
All right. Interesting. Ownership's got to be through the floor on this.
Right.
Wait, I'm sorry. Did you say Boston or Houston?
I said both, but
okay.
Boston is priced down.
Yeah, well, because if one thing is evident, and you know what, let me see if we have if the stack tool is updated, because I want to make sure, because I don't know if yes, okay, 13 minutes ago, perfect. I was looking at one that wasn't updated, Adam. So, Washington's still up there. Boston is at, and this is projected ownership, 2%. Houston at 1.1%. You mentioned both. I'm not going to disagree with you on that, but I can't help but think that Houston against Rick Porcello with like virtually zero ownership is pretty appealing. Now, the biggest thing though is if you're looking at, say, DraftKings, where they do have dynamic pricing, they haven't priced any of these guys down. Springer is $26 on Yahoo. Correa is $23. Bregman is $25. So it's not just a matchup. It's the pricing on Houston on a 15-game slate as well that has to play into it pretty heavily.
Right, and that's my argument for Boston too. Like you can stack Boston, which is one of the better offenses in baseball from an upside standpoint. You can get whatever one-offs you want, and you can get Jacob Degrom. Like that just gives you a ton of upside. I don't care who you're facing, and nobody's going to they're not going to be popular.
Yep, valid point. Anything else you want to hit on here at Fenway?
Nope.
Let's talk Baltimore and Cleveland. Dylan Bundy, Jeffrey Rodriguez. Rodriguez has done a good job limiting runs, but man, if you want to talk about somebody that's just got a dismal swinging strike rate, basically doing nothing to miss bats, you've come to the right place. Check this out, man. Not only does he have a 6.6% swinging strike rate, okay? You thought that was bad. I'll do you one better. It's the worst I've seen since I started updating this stat on my sheet and following it each day and updating it. 19% called plus swinging strike rate for Rodriguez, Adam. 19%.
Yeah, pretty awful. And Baltimore, not the best, not the best offense, but they're not terrible. Yeah. And you do have some power in there. You have Chris Davis batting fourth at a really nice price tag. He has not been bad against right-handed pitching this year. He's been so bad against lefties that it's dragging down like all of his numbers by a ton. But against righties, he has an ISO well over 200 this season. And you have to keep in mind that he hit into bad luck for like the first month of the year. It's a nice spot for him. And then from him down in the Baltimore lineup, you do get some power upside at cheap price tags with, Renato Nunez and Rio Ruiz. Steve Wilkerson is okay. And then above him, you actually have guys that, Mancini's a good hitter. Jonathan Villar has some upside. Baltimore's not like a top stack for me. I'm not trying to say that, but they are a spot that offers some cheap upside in guys like Chris Davis in particular.
What do you think Davis's hard hit rate is against righties?
Like percentage?
Yeah.
Well, when he hits the ball, he normally hits it pretty hard. So I would guess it's relatively high.
Yeah, it's 49%.
Yeah.
It's a very high number. So
yeah, it is.
Just reinforcing what you're saying. Like but we've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. Like ever since he snapped out of that hitless streak, and even when he was in it, he was hitting the ball hard. He's not especially given his price, he really has not been a disaster at all with the platoon advantage.
Yeah, me and Josh went on like a 20-minute tangent this morning because I said Chris Davis had actually been good this season. I was referring to against righties, but
20 minutes.
Yeah, that turned into a 20-minute argument.
Oh, so it was an argument.
Yeah.
What was Josh's side of it?
I don't know. He kept yelling about batting average and stuff.
He kept yelling about. I know he's listening right now. So I'm waiting for him to pop in, mess our screen up, and just say Chris Davis sucks ass. But no, you're too professional for that, Josh. Don't think about it. See, I'm like taunting him right now, and he's running over to his computer.
He's probably in the middle of cooking, and now he's like running across the kitchen.
All right. He's taking a nap with it on, and you just see the one eye open. Did I hear Chris Davis? But yeah, look, I don't think either of us are saying, oh yeah, go load up on Chris Davis. But what you're saying is, like, it's not the greatest. They're not the Marlins.
Right.
They're not the Marlins.
And with Chris Davis.
Go ahead.
I'll say, yeah, they're not the Marlins. They have guys that have some power at least. And with Chris Davis in particular, against righties this year, he has an ISO of like 227. His expected ISO is even a little higher than that. His expected WOBA is at like 325. Go find other $3,500 hitters on DraftKings that have that kind of power.
Yeah. Right. All right. I think we'll talk about the elephant in the room. Cleveland Indians have a very high total here. Dylan Bundy has allowed 9 home runs to righties this season. I believe that's the highest of any pitcher on this slate. Yes, by 3 full home runs. Well, you wouldn't have 3.5, but by 3 home runs, he's allowed 9 homers to righties, 2 to lefties. Obviously he struggles with the long ball regardless, and Cleveland has been better at home. But I did find something really fascinating, and I don't think I disagree with it. So when you look at ownership, Cleveland right now, highest projected stack ownership. Again, we're talking about the Awesemo stack tool. It's under the MLB tab on awesemo.com if you wanted to follow along and reference this with us. But they're also, and their top value, I get it, is up there. But the top stack probability is, it came up. It was, okay, so it was way lower, or it was lower earlier in the day. It's at 4.2%. So better than it was. Do you love Cleveland here with a bunch of lefties against Bundy?
I was going to make, I think, the same point that you were getting at. It's a really good spot. Bundy gives up power. He is still not getting strikeouts against lefties this year, even though he's throwing his changeup more. And it's a bad Baltimore bullpen, and Cleveland's really cheap. Even their good hitters like Lindor and Ramirez are cheap. So it's a good spot. The point is just that they are, right now at least, projected to be the highest. Them in Oakland are projected to be the highest owned stacks on the slate.
Right.
And there are 30 teams on this slate. Like, playing a Cleveland team that, if they really are going to come in with like a 10% stack ownership, they just aren't going to be the highest scoring team on the slate that often. It's just not going to happen. And so that's where you would start to get away from them. Again, it's one where I expect I'll get, like in Cruncher, I'll get a lot of Cleveland lineups because it is a really good value. But then once I actually break down my lineups and figure out what I'm playing, if Cleveland's ownership does not come down from this point, I would expect to come in under the field, because what will happen is I'll get Cleveland stacks with like Cleveland Boston or something like that. Like, I'll probably get some lineups like that with a contrarian second stack, but I won't be getting, Cleveland plus Degrom plus Oakland or something like everyone else.
Right. Yeah, I just kind of got this feeling that, and it's not a feeling. It's just based on ownership, and I'll be honest, like how Cleveland's produced this year. Bundy is more homer prone against righties. It's not to say, look, this is not to say that Cleveland can't just go off against Bundy, but if they are going to be the highest owned stack, this is a slate where I'm not opposed to getting away from that a little bit. And, one of the reasons is comes down to, we've got 15 games, and
right.
There are other teams that are equally appealing to me. For example, and look, I know pricing plays into it, but Texas has right now half of the projected ownership, and we'll get to some other teams that are lower than they should be. But is there Is there anything else we should discuss here? Are you on any Baltimore bats? Are you playing Rodriguez? To me, he just can't get enough misses for a slate like this, but maybe you have a different perspective.
No, I mean, there's other guys around Rodriguez that I'd rather get to. And I mean, as far as Baltimore bats, sure, like we talked about, I think that there is some value there as far as power goes. Cleveland, I like on a point per dollar basis. It's just right now, I think they're going to come in more popular than I would really like.
All right. Let's keep it going then. Cincinnati, LA Dodgers. You and I really already teased this pretty heavily. You've got Anthony DeSclafani at home, Great American Ballpark, one of the most homer-friendly parks in the league. And then you have the Dodgers going up against DeSclafani. Rich Hill on the mound for them. I guess first, before we get into bats here, what are your thoughts on Rich Hill against the Reds?
Not someone I'm getting to on this slate. Again, Joey Lucchesi just breaks a lot of this mid-range for me because I would much rather roster him for $800 less than Rich Hill, and that's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, like Hill, I think is a good pitcher. I think that it's a reasonably decent matchup against Cincinnati. The park's not good. He's not facing the Pirates in Petco, so that kind of takes him off the board for me.
All right. I'm with you. I don't have interest in him. He's too expensive, and I have to worry about pitch count. But the Dodger bats, and I just want you to speak to how this affects FanDuel. The Dodger bats are like, it's not like, oh, hey, good value. They're so stupidly cheap that if you're not rostering them in cash, you're just better off not playing. And even in tournaments, it's so difficult to get away from a team, not just because of their Vegas total, right? Not just because they're going to be popular and you think you got to play, but because it's a really, really, really good spot, and they should all be like $1,000 more on FanDuel than they are each.
Right. And so, I think you nailed it. In cash games, you absolutely should be playing them. In tournaments, and this is where using Fantasy Cruncher and having some sort of automated process makes things a lot easier. Because if you're hand building, at least if, like for me, it's really hard not to be like, oh, well, this is a contrarian team, but it still has the Dodgers. And then you're still just competing with such a high percentage of the field. If you look at the stack tool for FanDuel, we have the Dodgers with the second highest chance of being the highest scoring team on the slate. We also have them being by far the highest owned stack at 16% compared to a 6.5% chance of being the highest scoring stack on the slate.
Right.
Like 6.5% on a 30-game slate, it's pretty high likelihood, but I think the ownership probably just outpaces that. And there are 29 other teams. Like, you can't really reinforce that enough. If you stack the Dodgers and guys on this team are 20-30% owned, and they are the highest scoring team, cool, you're still competing with like 5,000 different teams that have 4-man Dodger stacks, and you have to be the best. If you play any other team, then and the Dodgers fail somehow, there's multiple, it's baseball, stuff just happens. Then if they fail, you're just losing like a third of the field that doesn't have a chance at winning. So it's just, you have to pass up good spots on hitters in tournaments sometimes because of ownership, and right now it looks like that's probably the case with the Dodgers. On FanDuel.
Right. So that's what I was going to say. Let's say ownership's unimportant. It's not, but let's say it is. We're not even thinking about that. How much do you love this spot for the Dodgers? Okay, like in a vacuum.
On FanDuel, they'd be like, if ownership didn't matter, if you just got paid based on how many points you scored, the Dodgers would be in like every lineup I played.
Right.
At these on FanDuel.
So let's talk about Yahoo and let's talk about DraftKings. So you have Jock Peterson. Well, on Yahoo, they're expensive. They're more expensive, most expensive as a collective, as a stack on DraftKings, where Muncy is $5K, Jock Peterson $5K, Bellinger $5,500, Seager $4,100, but he's pretty cheap everywhere else. This team is expensive. But are you going to make an effort to get some Dodgers, or hope that you have some Dodgers in your stacks today on DraftKings where their projected ownership is market or considerably lower?
Yeah, I'm expecting that I'll have Dodgers there. At least I'm hoping I am, because it is a really good spot and because the pricing is more appropriate, so their ownership come down. If you're looking for reasons why the Dodgers maybe fail, the Reds do have 3 lefties in their bullpen. Everyone on the Dodgers, other than Peterson, all of their lefties do hit lefties well. So it's not like it's likely that they just shut them down. But it's still less favorable than Desclafani in the middle innings. But on DraftKings, I don't think the ownership gets high enough for me to want to stay away for that reason. But on FanDuel, it's just you kind of have to just hope that it doesn't come through sometimes in tournaments.
I'm with you. What else do you make of this game? Any Reds bats? There's some decent power righties. Great Americans probably. We know it's a top 5 righty power park in the league. What do you make of this matchup against Rich Hill?
It's not a spot that I really want to get to. Like Eugenio Suarez is the guy that stands out the most for me. Obviously, a ton of power at third base, but you have a very similar spot with Anthony Rendon, who I would rather get to against Hamels. I think that Washington as a stack has more upside than Cincinnati, so Rendon projects a little bit better. And then, there's just other third base plays. You have Matt Carpenter, for example, against Sampson in Texas, just, the first guy that I thought of. But I don't think I'll get to much Cincinnati.
Okay. Me neither, but I had to ask. Let's keep it going then. We've got about, we've got through 6 games here. Yeah, 6, 7, 8 games to go. Plenty of time here. Live before lock coming up after us, taking you till 7:05 Eastern time. That is when this slate locks. Oakland, Detroit, Frankie Montas, Daniel Norris. Montas has been pretty decent, but when I looked over everything, I don't see anything that suggests this is sustainable. Not sustainable to limiting runs. But why am I echoing there? That's weird. Hold on a second. I'm coming through on your end. All right. I can fix that for now. No, I can't. You hear the echo? Huh. All right. Well, I'll keep talking. And hopefully it goes away. Okay. What I was saying is Montas, though, is decent. It's some days his fastball is getting a lot of whiffs. Some days it isn't, even though it's like 99 or 97, 98 miles per hour. Tigers strike out a lot, but are you willing to pay this much for Montas when it goes back to the same thing I was saying about Hamels and about other guys in the similar range? Is it worth it to go to a guy that we know most days is going to finish with 4, 6, 5 strikeouts?
No, there's a couple of things that make me not want to get to him here. He's good at running runs. He's not a true strikeout pitcher. And the Tigers strike out a lot. This is something that we were talking about in Slack earlier today. But the thing you have to keep in mind is that it doesn't matter that the Tigers strike out a lot if DraftKings takes a $7,500 pitcher and makes him $8,800 because the Tigers strike out a lot. That's him getting to a price point where you're still not really interested. And then on top of that, he does have better strikeout numbers, better swing and miss numbers against lefties because he has added a splitter this year that has about a 20% swinging strike percentage, but he throws it twice as often to lefties. So you kind of get the Kevin Gausman problem from a couple of years ago. So it's just he's overpriced in my opinion, especially when you have someone like Joey Lucchesi for less money.
Right. That's where I'm at as well. It's kind of difficult to get there. Daniel Norris on the other side, he's done a decent job of preventing runs too, but he just doesn't get enough strikeouts. You talked about Oakland and their super high ownership. What are you thinking here with the Oakland Bats? Because they continuously or routinely on DraftKings are underpriced, like the Dodgers are on FanDuel, not to the same extent maybe, but they're really cheap on DraftKings.
Yeah, they're way too cheap. Especially, I don't think Norris is a bad pitcher,
no, he's
but
not.
The Detroit bullpen is awful. And if they can get to Norris, they all have the platoon advantage against Norris with the exception of Matt Olson, who's just a high upside hitter anyway. If they can get to Norris early in the game and get to the bullpen, you can see the same exact thing you saw yesterday where they just pile on run after run after run throughout the rest of the game. And that's where their upside really comes from, and they're really inexpensive. So it's kind of nice that you have them and Cleveland so underpriced because it'll kind of flatten out the ownership between those two teams probably. But it's the same thing that we were talking about with Cleveland. It's a good spot, but there are 28 teams that are not Oakland or Cleveland on DraftKings. So where I do have Oakland, I want to be contrarian. I want to have my second stack be contrarian in most of those lineups. or be contrarian at pitcher. But on this slate, I think it's more likely I go off the board for hitters. But I just, you want to make sure that you give yourself a clear path to win if you're rostering Oakland, because it doesn't do any good to just be playing like 1-versus-1 against, 800 lineups or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Who would your favorite bats be, though, from Oakland? Obviously, Chris Davis is 4,100 and Chapman is 4,200. But so something pretty interesting about this Oakland team is when you look at what they've done against lefties, okay, some of it is just kind of eye-popping. So let me just pull it up here. Here we go. I wanted to pull them up individually. The Athletics are okay. Chris Davis against lefties this season has 6 home runs in 46 plate appearances. Chapman has 5 home runs in 46 appearances. Piscotty 3 in 48. Just like a number of these guys with monster ISOs against lefties. It's definitely possible that you get a big game here, but I also think it's important to note, and I believe you did, Norris isn't a total gas can where it's like guaranteed that he just goes out and gives up 3 home runs in the first 4 innings.
He's not Giovanni Soto or whatever the guy's name was.
Gregory Soto. Yeah.
Yeah, Giovanni's the catcher. Yeah.
Who only pitched like an inning or something. Didn't he only? Yeah. He went 1 inning, right?
Yeah, he's supposed to go like 1 or 2, I think.
Yeah, he went 2 innings. 2 innings. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you have interest in Tiger bats against Montas?
No, just not a spot that I want to get to. It's not like Montas is going to have ownership to leverage against, and there's not really good bats in this lineup. Like Kristen Stewart and Nick Castellanos are the 2 that I think you could make arguments for just based on the power they have and the fact that they actually are pretty decent hitters. In Castellanos' case, he's a very good hitter. But again, it's the 15-game slate. I can get to a lot of spots that aren't the Tigers.
We don't have to spend a lot of time on this next one. Jacob Degrom against the Miami Marlins. We touched on it already, but the Marlins have a 2.6 run total, lowest on the slate by a lot. And then on the other side of this one, the New York Mets are at 4 even against Trevor Richards. Break down this pitching matchup at Marlins Park. Very friendly pitcher park, Adam.
Yeah, it's pretty much all I'm interested in is the pitching here. Degrom has the best matchup you get in baseball. It's the favorable part. Just faced this team, I think last week or the week before, but you expect a ton of strikeouts here. You expect him to limit the runs against him, and he's the number 1 pitcher on the board for me, and it's not particularly close. As far as Richards goes, he's one of like the 3 mid-range guys below Joey Lucchesi that I'm interested in on the 2 pitcher sites. The Mets are missing Michael Conforto, which is a big deal, especially when you replace him with Carlos Gomez. Trevor Richards has a really good changeup that he throws to both sides of the plate, and it's a pitch that normally will give you reverse splits, but he's actually struck out a much higher percentage of righties this year than lefties, which I think is good to see, especially because the Mets are running a very right-handed heavy lineup out there. Against righties this year, Richards has allowed a 337 expected WOBA, 207 ISO with a 24.9% strikeout percentage. Sorry, that's since the start of last year. His strikeout percentage this year to righties is 26.9% compared to 15.2 for lefties. So the fact that you get this lineup from the Mets where you have, it almost seems like they're trying to get right-handed bats in there because of Richards' changeup.
Yeah.
But
we were doing so well.
Carlos Gomez doesn't exactly lower Trevor Richards' upside from a DFS. What'd you say?
You froze up for like a few seconds. I said we were doing so well.
Oh, could you hear what I was saying?
Finish your last sentence.
Oh, I just said that adding, even if you do think Richards is going to be worse against righties than lefties, adding Juan Lagares and Carlos Gomez certainly doesn't lower his DFS upside.
Right, for sure. Do you want to talk, only because I try and cover everything and not skip over anything, do you want to talk any hitters here?
Nope.
Okay. I probably could have got away with not asking that question. My Atlanta and Milwaukee, SunTrust Park. Did you see the guy run out onto the field and get smoked by security the other day?
No, I didn't.
I retweeted it. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Dude, this guy's fast and he looks like a homeless bum and he looks like a vagrant, honestly. And he's running and he jukes the security guard with like a nasty Jamal Charles in his prime sidestep. And he's got all this open space and he runs towards home plate where there's nowhere to go. Security guard comes out, lays his shoulder into him up against the brick backstop, and just flattens him. You got it. You got to see this. It's really something.
I'll check that out.
Yeah,
I think I remember you tweeting it out. I saw like something about the fan juking someone, but I didn't watch the whole clip.
Yeah. You will enjoy it. But anyway, Atlanta hosts the Milwaukee Brewers. Max Fried, Ulyss Chassin. Talk about the pitchers, and then just transition straight into bats because I might be wrong. I don't think you're going to have a ton of interest in pitching on this one.
I have probably less interest in this game overall than almost any game on the slate.
Interesting.
Max Fried, I think, has really good stuff. Milwaukee's a really tough matchup. I'm not rostering Max Fried over Joe Lucchesi, at least with any sort of frequency. And then on the other side, Ulyss Chassin is, much better against righties than lefties. You have a predominantly right-handed lineup, so not really looking to the Atlanta Bats here, but they're still really good hitters, and I don't really want to roster Chassin against them. It's just two pitchers that I think are good, or in the case of Chassin, good in his one split. Like Freddie Freeman, I guess, would be my favorite play here. Freeman, Braun, and Aguilar are like the three hitters that I would have interest in, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty much it for me too. I think the one guy I did mention Freeman in today's deep dive and Braun, but both of them were honorable mentions. And Aguilar. But as an honorable mention, none of them featured because it was just really hard to get there as top plays. Now, this next game, easily one of my favorites, Adam. Might be my favorite overall. It was yesterday, and it did me well. Texas and St. Louis. Miles Mikolas, Leclerc, and Sampson is your probable long reliever. So Miles Mikolas has been beat up by lefties this year, and I know we did a lot of shows together last year. If you remember, the one thing I had mentioned a lot, and I'm not saying I'm justified, but it looks like I may be, that I didn't buy into Mikolas against lefties. He just didn't miss enough bats, wasn't getting enough grounders to make it worthwhile. And we've seen this year, he has definitely struggled against lefties. Now he's going to have to face an onslaught of them. And guys like Willie Calhoun are crushing. I know it's early, but I think I DM'd you the other day. I was like, before his first start, that this guy's was crushing it in AAA too. So it's not like he just got lucky. So Chu, Calhoun, Pence, Gallo. We don't have any Mazzara, but you have Asdrubal Cabrera, Odor, who might have gotten off the schneid yesterday. Facing position players will help. Ronald Guzman, a lot of lefties against Mikolas. And then on the other side, Sampson's just been awful, particularly against righties, and the Cardinals are loaded with right-handed bats. It's like a perfect storm of run production and 85-degree temperature at Coors Southwest, Adam.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw out the one negative about this game at the top, and it's that Bill Miller is the umpire in this game. So if you stack this game and you're watching it, just accept that you're going to be getting pitches called 3 inches outside, 3 inches below the knees, and anywhere else strikes. But outside of that, there's nothing not to like here. And that's not enough to deter me from this game. It's great hitting conditions. It's a great hitter's park. And like you said, both of these teams just match up perfectly against, what the other pitcher struggles with. Mikolas, like you said, struggles with left-handed power. You have basically nothing but left-handed power in the lineup for Texas. It's not, I wish they had Mazzara in there over like Forsythe or Pence or one of those two righties. Sure. But still, plenty of power there from Texas. I'm a little bit more concerned about the umpire for Texas because I think Mikolas does have the ability to probably just live off the plate and get those calls. Sampson, I don't think is good enough. Like, I don't care. He really struggled with righties, like you said, and that's what the Cardinals have. They aren't cheap, but they aren't super expensive either. If, like, looking at DraftKings, outside of DeJong and Marcelo Ozuna, nobody in this lineup's over $4,500. Most of them are, $4,200 or less. Matt Carpenter is still free. Paul Goldschmidt is still free by Paul Goldschmidt standards. Jose Martinez has power. Molina's a good catcher option. Top to bottom, you have power in this lineup. So absolutely love the Cardinals. And as of the last time I updated the stack tool, they were far and away projected to be the highest probability stack on the slate. And they're projected to be popular, but nowhere near as high as they really should be.
Right. Highest top stack probability, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 14.3%. I totally agree with you. I do think you make a very good point on Michaelis. Like, if there's one thing he's capable of doing, it is probably exploiting the called strikes and a wider strike zone. But I think there are so many factors working against both of these pitchers that it's not going to dissuade you altogether. And I know that's exactly what you're saying too.
Yep.
I mentioned this to you today. I found it so fascinating, and I was like, oh, Adam will appreciate this. I was looking up pitchers. By the way, sorry, I got wicked allergies in the summer. So,
you and me both, man.
Yeah. Or in the spring, I mean. Like, I have trouble breathing, and I'm over here like it looks like I'm sneaking out of the screen to rip hits of crack, but that's not the truth. I am just really uncomfortable, and it's been that way for the past couple of weeks. So bear with me. Appreciate it. I love looking at catcher stats because I think it's one of the most overlooked aspects of baseball and how it affects the game. And I think even from a salary perspective, not even fantasy, like, teams overpay catchers so often because they're decent hitters and they're terrible defensively, which matters more than they're hitting. Unless you're like a phenomenal hitter, if you look the amount of wins per season that a catcher adds by framing pitches, right, and by controlling pitches and getting called strikes, it's usually always more than they would hitting, even if you're a good hitter. So, with that said, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, when you look at framing runs, the framing run stat, it's basically how many runs you've saved by your pitch framing. So, for example, at the top of the list this season, you have. Let me sort this because it's kind of important. At the top of the list, you have Austin Hedges at 6.5. That's a lot. Grandal at 5.7. Always been good. Danny Jansen, surprisingly, up there, 4.5. Real Muto's good. Flowers has always been good. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is -7. -7. It's the worst in the league by a wide margin. I know Mathis is in the lineup tonight, but what I'm saying is I just saw this yesterday, and I wanted to throw it out there because when Kiner-Falefa is in the lineup catching, it does make a difference, and there is an advantage to the hitters in terms of getting more advantageous counts. And I like that stat. Wilson Contreras and Gary Sanchez, and of course Wellington Castillo, have also been god awful this year. But I do think it's an important stat if you use it properly.
Yeah, completely agree. I wish Kiner-Falefa was catching tonight because I would love to see which has a bigger impact, Bill Miller or a catcher that can't frame. That's
a great point. Yeah, like someone that it's good. Yeah, because one of the biggest things with framing is the best catchers are the ones that can catch it here, but you never see the glove move to here. You know what I mean? The other ones are wild with it, and you can see it clearly trying to get a called strike. I wonder if that's what Falefa does, or he just doesn't even try.
And also, I mean, like Gary Sanchez, if you watch clips of him, you'll get a pitch like knee high down the middle, and he just catches it by pulling it out of the strike zone and doesn't get the call.
Right. So he's literally taking away strikes.
Right.
Yep, and putting runs on the board. All right. I think we covered this. It's just a great hitting atmosphere, and one that I think should be exploited. What are your thoughts? Oh God, this is gonna suck. Aaron Sanchez and Ivan Nova. I told you this morning, and you go, don't tell me that because what did you say? You said, don't tell me because
I said I've fallen for a million times before.
Right. It'll get your hopes up, and then it'll just, shit all over your day. You said, I don't want to. I said, dude, Check out Aaron Sanchez whiff rate on his curveball and changeup and his usage over the last 2 starts. He goes, I don't want to because I fall for it every time. And then the next start, he throws nothing but fastballs. You're so right. But I have to mention 30% whiff rate, 2 games in a row on his curveball. It's the first time he's had a 30% whiff rate in any game, let alone twice in a row on that pitch since 2016. But you're saying this is an anomaly. Aaron Sanchez is going to go back to being the guy that decides he doesn't want to get any strikeouts. Is that what we're saying? Or is that what you're expecting to happen?
I mean, I hope not. I'm rostering a lot of him, and
Yeah, me
I
too.
have always wanted him to be a lot better than he is. He has really good movement on his changeup. He has really good movement on his curveball. There were trends last year where it was like, oh, Sanchez finally figured out he should throw his curveball a lot, and he would get swings and misses. And then normally, I think what would happen is he would get like BABIP to death or something in the start, and he would just give it up. Like that was the reason. But it just never like stayed consistent. But I do think that it's worth pointing out he's throwing for the season, not just his last 2 starts. He's throwing his curveball twice as often as he did last year. He's cut back on his changeup a little bit, but his curveball usage has gone from 12 to about 24%. And that is something that I think has always been a big key for Sanchez, at least over the last couple of years, as far as strikeouts go. His strikeouts have ticked up this year. He's still only at like 21.5% overall, but compared to where he was last year, that's an improvement. And you have a White Sox team that strikes out a lot, and you have Sanchez at an appealing price tag. So all of that, I'm going to Sanchez here. I have no confidence that his pitch usage from yesterday or last start translates into today because he's just all over the place with it. But even if I didn't know that he was getting a bunch of swings and misses in those last 2 starts on his curveball, I would still be rostering a $6,900 Aaron Sanchez.
Right. And I think you just nailed it right there very simply. $6,900 Aaron Sanchez. Why is that important? Well, because Montas is $8,800. Max Fried is $83 against Milwaukee. Lyles is $8,100. Miles Michaelis is $8K. Even Marco Gonzalez is $7,800 against Minnesota. Given their prices compared to Sanchez, he's like, and you look at the guys that he's priced next to: Cole Irvin, Jeffrey Rodriguez, Julius Chassin. Whether you love the guy or not, he is underpriced. So
yeah, and there's clearly upside. I mean, he and this doesn't matter. Like, I don't want people to take it like that I care what he did against the team in the past, but he struck out 11 White Sox the last time he faced them. He clearly has the ability to do that.
Yep, he gave up 5 runs, but like I care more about the fact that you're missing bats, and he certainly did a lot of them. He had a 16% swinging strike rate in each of his last 2 starts. I mean, look, is it something he's going to keep up? I don't know, but it is at least encouraging going into a start against a high strikeout team. What are your thoughts on hitters here?
Not a ton of interest. Obviously I'm going to be getting to Sanchez as an SP2 option. I think that Ivan Nova is kind of an interesting SP2 option if you really need to go cheap. Like, I think people are kind of interested in Matt Harvey, but I think the matchup's more favorable for Nova. He's facing not as many righties as I was hoping for now that I see the lineup, but he's
I thought
not
it was
any
going to
worse
be more
than
too.
Yeah, he's still not any worse than Matt Harvey is. I have them projected like identically. So Justin Smoke would be the guy that really stands out to me from this game. He is inexpensive. He has a ton of power from the left side. That's what Nova normally struggles with. Vlad Guerrero is just too cheap for the type of hitter that I think that he is. Randall Grichuk has power. Tellez has power from the left side. The problem is that on DraftKings and Yahoo, you can't roster Smoke and Tellez together. But I think 3-man stacks with that grouping is probably my favorite spot to go to in this game.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I thought you'd get more, but I think we only have 4 righties in the lineup, and Nova against lefties is quite concerning. But what, like you said, it's if Harvey's going to be popular, and you're like, I need to get a really cheap pitcher, and it's not Aaron Sanchez, there's no way I'm going with a chalk Harvey. I'll tell you why in a bit, but I just don't see the need to do that. So I don't disagree with you. Obviously, you're not.
Yeah.
I don't think you're condoning, going heavy on Ivan Nova. More so saying, Well, if you're planning on going with a lot of Matt Harvey, maybe mix it up a little bit because Matt Harvey also isn't very good.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that I have none of Nova or Harvey than it is that I have like tons of Nova or something.
And it's probably in that case, it probably results in a good, obviously a lot of Lucchesi, but certainly a good amount of Aaron Sanchez at a similar price.
Yeah. Sanchez, Richards, Merrill Kelly.
Yeah, Merrill Kelly too. And Richards really is not a bad play. I mean, his fastball is not very good at all, but the changeup's filthy. Arizona, San Francisco, Jeff Samardzija, and your boy, Kenneth Merrill Kelly at Chase Field. Looking at some run totals here before I toss it over your way. The San Francisco Giants right now sit at, what is it, 4.1? Yes, 4.1. And the Diamondbacks are coming in at, 5 runs for the Diamondbacks here against Samardzija.
Yeah, Samardzija is really, really bad. On a lot of slates, I would like the Diamondbacks a lot. The problem is just that, I mean, going through the slate, we've had so many teams where I'm like, oh, I really like them, either because I think that they're really likely to succeed, or in the case of Houston and Boston, I think they have monster ceilings. It's, I can't roster them all. So Arizona kind of drops off the list there, but Samardzija is bad, and it wouldn't be surprising at all if Arizona does, throw up 8-9 runs with guys, like Escobar, Peralta, Jones, Marte, Walker. Like, they all have pop. It's not a bad park to hit in. It's a fine spot. I'm just not really getting there. And then on the other side for Kelly, I have him behind Sanchez. I have him behind Richards, but he's kind of like the third guy for me out of that grouping, where I do have him ahead of guys like Harvey and Nova at similar price points. The Giants just aren't a good offensive team. Brandon Belt is good offensively, and I think that he's a perfectly fine one-off. But outside of him, there's nobody that I really am scared of on the Giants, especially from a power standpoint. And I think there's a pretty good chance that Kelly's able to just give you, 5-6 innings, strike out enough guys, and not give up that many runs, and kind of just give you like 15, 16 points.
Okay. Look, I get it. It makes total sense to me. Do you want to spend any time talking hitters here?
Nope.
All right. Well, that makes my life easier. How about we talk about the Angels and the Kansas City Royals, Matt Harvey, Brad Keller. Tell you what, man, the Angels getting a ton of love almost every night from a Vegas perspective. And look, I don't really have a huge issue with this one. Brad Keller does a good job of limiting power, but Angel Stadium this year is second in home runs. That's right, second in home runs. We've seen those. Shout out to one of our viewers, our listeners, for tweeting us and telling us to check that out. I did, and you've seen a big difference here at Angel Stadium. But, well, I'll let you talk on Harvey and Keller first. I was just going to point out that Ohtani is still too cheap in a couple places. Yahoo and FanDuel, they adjusted on DraftKings, but I still love him. And he is, simply put, one of the best pitchers, one of the best hitters in the league. So even if you're not stacking the Angels, I still love Ohtani. But go ahead. What's your analysis here?
Yeah, I really like Ohtani. I obviously really like Trout. But outside of that, I just don't see myself getting here. I think their 5.6 implied run total seems really, really weird. But we've seen that almost all season long. They just keep having these really high implied run totals, and they don't really make a whole lot of sense. You look at Keller, he's not a high strikeout guy at all. But if you go back to last season, since the start of last year, he's thrown 1,505 pitches to lefties. He's allowed a 106 ISO, a 131 expected ISO. He's thrown 1,631 pitches to righties, 109 ISO, 131 expected ISO. He's done a good job of just not giving up power. And now you have an Angels team that, outside of Trout and Ohtani, doesn't really have a lot of power. I still don't believe Tommy La Stella is a power hitter. And even if he was, he's now $4,900 on DraftKings, so I'm good there. And Simmons, we know, doesn't have power. Pujols usually doesn't have power unless he's facing like Dylan Bundy. So it's just a spot where I don't see myself getting to the Angels compared to a lot of other teams on the slate.
That's kind of where I'm at. Again, Ohtani I still like a lot. But that's pretty much Ohtani in any spot if you're going to price him disrespectfully. You mentioned like, oh yeah, Mike Trout, I'm honorable mention him each day in the deep dive just because I don't want to waste everybody's time and he's really good. But yep. outside of a vacuum, do you see yourself getting up to a lot of Trout today when he is, super high priced, and we've got Dodger bats and we've got a lot of other high priced hitters today that are in good spots, better spots?
I doubt it. The outfield's stacked. I don't think
Yeah.
that from an upside standpoint, you need to pay up for Trout because it's not like his ceiling is like massively higher than anyone else. It's his probability of getting there. And floor for everyone in baseball is 0, but his floor is a little bit higher than others because he walks so much and he's just so good at getting on base. But from an upside standpoint in tournaments, you're not losing anything by having, saving $1,000 to another guy that has a 250 ISO.
All right. Jay Kelly says St. Louis and Texas in such good spots. I'm considering stacking both of them. Do you think? And not many people are going to do it. Is that too cute? Not, dude. Game stacking in baseball. There's nothing. One team scoring runs doesn't mean the other doesn't negatively correlate with the other team scoring runs. No, I love both teams here. I'll let Adam answer that, but I will say I don't think it's not going to be popular. I don't think it's going to be contrarian. No, stacking both teams in the same game, especially at Globe Life, we do it in cores all the time.
Yeah, no, it's perfectly fine. I don't think it's like completely off the board, like you said, but I also don't think it's over-owned. I think it's perfectly fine. They're two really high up spots.
Exactly. Minnesota, we got 2 games to go here. Hey, by the way, if you are just jumping in now and didn't catch the beginning of the show, or not jumping in now, but, jumping in earlier than when I did this the last time, I'm posting the link. That was really difficult and unnecessarily hard for me, Adam. I'm dropping the Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports link into chat now. They sponsor the Deeper Dive, and we appreciate them. And I think you'd really enjoy the site, especially if you're not an MME guy. So sign up, use the promo code AWESOMO, get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points. I popped it in there now. All right, 2 games to go. Seattle and Minnesota. Seattle let me down, man. We both liked Minnesota yesterday. You liked them more, so good call on that. But Seattle really let me down. Either way, it's a new day. And we got to talk about Martin Perez first. I know we don't have a ton of time, so fortunately for you guys, I can't rant about Martin Perez. But he's been really good, and his cutter's been very good, and his four-seamer's even getting double-digit whiffs this year. And he has the highest swinging strike rate, called strike plus swinging of his career. Everything has been great for him. But it is a matchup that is difficult. It is a Seattle team whose implied run total has risen throughout the day, Adam. Last I looked, it had risen 0.3. It was from 4.4 to 4.7. What are your thoughts on Perez here? Is it too expensive? Is it not a good matchup? Are you willing to do it in tournaments at low ownership? Go ahead.
I don't think I'll get there. I think that he obviously has improved. I think that he's much better than he has been in the past. It's still a Mariners team that has a ton of right-handed power, which scares me. And he also is more expensive than Joey Lucchesi, which means that I probably won't really get to him because I have Joey Lucchesi as like my 4th highest scorer on the entire slate. So, yeah, I mean, he's a viable tournament option. I just think that with 30 offenses in play, I will probably be concentrated on pitching and looking for lower owned stacks as opposed to lower owned pitchers that I don't have projected as well.
I'm with you. What about this game in general? On the other side, Marco Gonzalez, the one thing that stood out to me, and it was really just a positional thing, was Williams Astudillo at catcher at a bad position against a contact lefty. Astudillo struck out twice altogether this season. If you need a catcher that's going to put the ball in play, I don't think that's a crazy option batting 5th. Mitch Garver's on the IL, so you get a bump for Astudillo in the lineup. But I don't know how much else I love here. Are you on Minnesota today?
I'm with you on Astudillo. I think he's one of the better catching options just because he's going to put the ball in play 4 or 5 times, and he's not expensive. Marwin Gonzalez also is really cheap if you need a cheap guy. I normally don't get as much of him as the field does just because he's not a good enough hitter for me to want to roster him at high ownership. But on this particular slate, with ownership being more spread out, maybe he comes down a bit. So those 2 guys are the 2 that I think from a pricing standpoint makes some sense. Gonzalez is a decent enough pitcher when he's at home. Like, he's a fly ball pitcher. He does a good job of limiting home runs, particularly at home, which makes sense. It's like 57 degrees there. It's a big enough park even once they moved into the outfield fences in. So not a whole lot of interest in hitting on either side of this game.
All right. We got 2 minutes to go, and I want Adam to break down Lucchesi because he's talked about him, and start with Jordan Lyles in this last game. Before we do, if you enjoy the show and you want to help support us and see more of it, like the video, hit us with a thumbs up because it helps us a lot, as you of course know. We say it every night, and we greatly appreciate it. So if you hit us with a thumbs up, if you like the video, that'd be awesome. And subscribe, hit that notification bell so you always know when new content's going to drop next. Adam, close us out here. Jordan Lyles and Lucchesi, 4-run total for the Padres, 3.1 for the Pirates, second lowest on the slate. All you.
Yeah, like you said, second lowest implied run total on the slate for Pittsburgh. This particular lineup doesn't have a ton of strikeouts. Melky Cabrera is a tough strikeout. Elias Diaz is a downgrade from Cervelli as far as strikeouts go, but it's still a really bad lineup. Like, who in here outside of Starling Marte, Josh Bell, and maybe Brian Reynolds are you concerned about? It's just not a good lineup, and they've been one of the least productive teams against left-handed pitching in all of baseball this year. Their active roster has one of the highest strikeout percentages, which, again, like I said, is not completely the case tonight with this particular lineup. But Lucchesi is a good pitcher. I mean, he struck out about 26.5% of hitters this year. He had a good rookie season last year, 3.45 xFIP this season. The only negative really that you have on Lucchesi is that he doesn't get that deep into games. He tends to throw like 85, 90 pitches. And at an $8,200 price tag on DraftKings, that's not super appealing, but I still have him well ahead of everyone else around him. And on FanDuel, he's 6,200, which, like I said earlier, I don't think there's a middle ground on FanDuel. You should probably be rostering Lucchesi or one of the stud pitchers. Like, I don't think there's a reason to really be getting anywhere else because it's not a point per dollar play for me on Lucchesi. I have him projected higher than every pitcher that is not Scherzer, Cole, or Degrom. So I don't really know what the reasoning would be for spending more money a pitcher on FanDuel. And then on Yahoo, he's affordably priced as an SP2 as well. So it's just a really appealing spot. He's not too expensive. I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but, I think he's a very clear top pitching option here.
All right. I don't really have any bats from this game. If you do, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Nope. Lyles is good enough, and there's enough hitters on this slate that I don't need it.
All right. Quickly, top stacks.
Cleveland, Oakland, Dodgers. I already said Oakland. Texas, St. Louis.
That was not quickly, but I appreciate the try. Give me Cardinals and the Rangers, and outside of that, it's kind of tough. I guess we would go with, this isn't fast either, Dodgers, really love them, and Athletics. And the last one I'll throw out here, I love your Houston Astros 1%er call, where you can get them.
And Red Sox.
Yeah,
I know you don't like it, but I love it.
But yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, put it that way.
Yeah.
That'll do it for us. Dave Locker and Adam Scher, as always, it's been a pleasure, fellas and ladies. We'll be back with you on Monday. Tune in to Sirius XM Radio, by the way, Saturday, Sunday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Got some awesome guests coming up, including Ben Rasa and Chris Rendon, and a special surprise on Sunday's show. We hope you will join us. Sirius 210 XM 87. Coming up next is the Live Before Lock show, taking you up till 7:05. Good luck tonight.